Asia, good evening America. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show today, few hours after Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei said that Iran's enemies will receive crushing response. US has now warned Iran, saying that it will not be able to restrain Israel if it attacks again. Will the warning deter Iran, and what are the global implications of an Iranian attack? We'll be tracking that on the show today. But first, a quick check on the headlines. Iran restricts airspace from tomorrow till November 6th over Space Center. This as Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei vows retaliation for October 26th attacks by Israel on Iran. US military says American B-52 bombers have arrived in West Asia after Washington announced deployment of bombers, fighters and missile defense destroyers in a warning to Iran. US presidential contestants Kamala Harris and Donald Trump hold a flurry of swing state rallies to persuade country's last undecided voters in the final weekend of the election campaign. Spain deploys 10,000 more troops and police officers to the eastern Valencia, devastated by a second deadliest flood in Europe this century that has killed at least 200 people. Hundreds march in Dhaka at a rally held by Bangladesh's Minority Front, demanding protections for Hindus and other minority communities against atrocities after August 5th uprising. Well, we start with what is happening in West Asia. The United States of America has now issued a stern warning to Iran against launching another strike on Israel. According to reports, Washington told Tehran it will not be able to hold Tel Aviv back or ensure that the next attack is calibrated and targeted as the previous one. There's no response from the US or Iran to that report, which came hours after Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's latest statement. In a video released by the Iranian state media, Khamenei threatened Israel as well as the US with a crushing response over attacks on Iran and its proxies. He, however, did not elaborate on the timing of the attack nor its scope. Notably, Iran has notified airspace closure from tomorrow till November 6th, citing gunfire. Iran has carried out two major attacks against Israel this year. The first in April, after a strike on its consulate in Damascus, and the second in October that Tehran said was in response to the assassination of Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh and chief of Hezbollah Hassan Nasrallah. Meanwhile, the war in Gaza continues. The Israeli military said 2 of its soldiers have been killed during fighting in the northern Gaza Strip on Saturday. In a span of a week of operation in Jabalia, the IDF said that its troops have killed some 900 terror operatives. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization said 4 children were among 6 people wounded in a strike on a polio vaccination center. WHO chief said that the vaccination center was in an area where a humanitarian pause was agreed to allow vaccination to proceed. On the other hand, The Israeli military said it identified 2 missiles crossing into Israeli territory from northern Gaza. It was the first such rocket fire from Gaza in weeks. Meanwhile, demonstrations continue in Israel. Hundreds gathered in Tel Aviv demanding that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secure a deal to release the hostages taken by Hamas militants on October 7th, while others called for early elections and for Netanyahu to step down. And well, for more on this, we're now being joined by Colonel David Biderosh from Washington, D.C. He is a West Asia analyst and an associate professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Security Studies. Welcome to World DNA, Colonel Biderosh. First up, U.S. has issued a stern warning to Iran that it will not be able to hold back Israel if it launches an attack. And of course, this warning comes after Bibi said that Israel can reach anywhere in Iran and few hours after Khamenei's fresh threat to Israel and the US. My question to you, will the latest warning deter Iran, as reports also suggest that US B-52 bombers have started arriving in West Asia?
Yeah, I think they will for the intended purpose, which is to ensure that you don't have a wider spread of conflict before the U.S. presidential election. I think the Iranians are pretty politically savvy, and they know that another major conflagration would probably strengthen Donald Trump in what is an election that's really too close to call. They do not want Donald Trump as president. Because his first act will probably be to reimpose harsh sanctions on Iran. So I think that at least for until Thursday, we're safe. The bigger question is how much action against Israel does the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps have to show in order to maintain some veneer of legitimacy with the Iranian population? I think it's probable that we'll see some action within the next 2 weeks.
Biderosh, you did touch upon the implications, the ramifications of any further attack by Iran or Israel, which could push West Asia into wider war, as we are just few days away from the US presidential polls. But talk to us more about the nature of Iranian attack. There is still no clarity on that or the timing of the attack. Israel says that Iran is facing a dilemma, perhaps, after the kind of damage incurred on the Iranian defense facilities, with reports also suggesting that Iran's S-300 air defense system has been damaged. How do you assess the nature of any kind of Iranian attack on Israel?
I think that Iran's S-300 system has been neutralized. This is embarrassing for Iran, given that it was their top defense acquisition priority. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase this from Russia, and Israel took it out rather easily. So I think that most of their radars are destroyed. Israel has also destroyed Iranian accessed air defense radars in Syria and Iraq. So what that means is that Iran has never been able to counter missiles launched from outside its airspace, but now Israel will be able to fly aircraft over Iran with a great degree of impunity. So basically, if Iran were to launch another missile and drone strike against Israel, Israel will have the ability to target pretty much anything within Iran, to include attacks on targets within the major cities. This would really rattle the Iranian public consciousness, and again would have great damage on the ruling regime, the Revolutionary Guard regime. So it's not just a defense issue, it's a regime survival issue for Iran. So that argues in favor of Iranian restraint. However, I'm afraid that the supreme leader is kind of painting himself into a box with his rhetoric. He can't say there will be response, every Friday for 4 weeks with no response. I think the American presence is designed primarily to ensure that Iran does not launch an attack against the Arab Gulf states, as Iran has threatened to do. And again, that keeps in with the Biden administration goal of preventing a wider regional conflict.
Right, Colonel Roche. Earlier, Khamenei appeared to downplay the attack launched by Israel on Iran, but in the past few hours, it seems like he's adamant on launching an attack on Israel. But thank you for joining us on World DNA with your insights.
Thank you.
U.S. presidential contestants Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are campaigning across the swing states on the final weekend of the election. Here's what has been making the news in the race to the White House. 75 million people have already cast early ballots as the hours tick down to the election day climax on Tuesday. Most polls show Trump and Harris within the margin of error from each other across the swing states. However, there was a surprise boost for Harris when a new survey in the Des Moines Register showed that the Democrat contestant Kamala Harris is 3 points ahead of Trump in Iowa, a state that Republican won easily both in 2016 and 2020 defeat. At a rally in Virginia, former President Donald Trump said that he ran for office to rescue the economy from obliteration, even though it would have been easier to relax at one of his oceanfront resorts. Trump was joined on stage by women from a local college swim team who have objected to competing against transgender athletes. Some of Trump's TV ads have also sought to capitalize on transgender controversies.
And I didn't need this. I didn't need to be with you today. I could have been at a gorgeous beach in lots of places. I own some of the most beautiful beaches. I could have had that salt water from the oceans. I like oceanfront property best. I could have been standing on a beach, my beautiful white skin getting nice and tan, being smacked in the face by a wave loaded up with salt water. And I could have said, the hell with everything. I could have had the greatest life in the world. Instead, I got missing a little piece of my ear.
In North Carolina, Democratic presidential contestant Kamala Harris claimed that, unlike Trump, she does not believe that people who disagree with her are her enemy. She promised that she will give them a seat at the table.
Because you see, unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe that people who disagree with me are the enemy. He wants to put them in jail. I will give them a seat at the table. That's what real leadership looks like. That's what strong leadership looks like.
Well, Saturday marked the last day of early voting in North Carolina, where over 3.8 million votes have been cast. While the state's western reaches are still recovering from Hurricane Helene's deadly flooding, North Carolina has 16 votes in the Electoral College, where 270 are needed to secure the presidency. The state backed Trump in 2020 by a narrow margin of less than 1.5 percentage points and elected a Democratic governor on the same day, giving hope to both the parties. While Indian American voters are expected to play an important part in the U.S. presidential elections, WION spoke to the Indian American voters on their aspirations and expectations. Take a listen.
When it comes to the Indian American voter, traditionally they have been voting the Democrats, but the shift is coming, especially with the male voters, the Indian American male voter, which has been focusing on Republicans. Now, Kamala Harris has a natural advantage. She is of Indian ancestry, and if she becomes the next president, then America will be having the first president of Indian ancestry. But she hasn't focused on that. She has been focusing on her black identity. Now, essentially, ahead of the elections, we have seen both Democrats and the Republicans trying to woo voters, especially when it comes to Diwali. The Democrats, of course, tweeting about Diwali at the White House. We saw Diwali. The Republicans, of course, Donald Trump posting a comment about the situation of the Bangladeshi Hindus. That is something that is for the first time that a mainstream American politician has talked about. So essentially, while the Indian American voter is a small percentage of the voting blocks, it can play an important role, especially in the swing states like in Philadelphia or Atlanta, or whether it is fundraising.
Moving on, India-Canada diplomatic standoff, it continues to escalate. The Indian government has summoned the Canadian High Commission representative and lodged a strong protest over Ottawa's allegations against Union Home Minister Amit Shah. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs has rubbished a Canadian minister's allegations against the Union Home Minister as absurd and baseless. Canada has alleged that Amit Shah is behind the plots to target Sikh separatists on Canadian soil.
It was conveyed in the note that the Government of India protests in the strongest terms to the absurd and baseless references made to the Union Home Minister of India before the committee by Deputy Minister David Morrison. In fact, the revelation that high Canadian officials deliberately leak unfounded insinuations to the international media as part of a conscious strategy to discredit India.
Two senior officials of the Justin Trudeau-led government recently confessed to leaking intelligence and other information against India to the Washington Post. This even before the Canadian police publicly alleged that their probe into the murder of Khalistani separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar revealed links between agents of the Indian government and homicides and violent acts in Canada. Deputy Foreign Minister David Morrison at a parliamentary panel on Tuesday has alleged that a top-ranking official in the Prime Minister Modi-led government was behind the plots to attack Nijjar. The Indian government has dismissed the allegations, saying that the move is aimed at discrediting India and influencing other nations. India has warned Canada that such irresponsible acts will have serious consequences. Ties between India and Canada worsened following the Canadian government's allegations of links between Indian agents and the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar last year. The Ministry of External Affairs has further slammed the surveillance of India's consular officials in Canada and has said that a formal protest has been lodged with the Justin Trudeau-led government over this very issue.
Yes, some of our consular officials were recently informed by the Canadian government that they have been and continued to be under audio and video surveillance. Their communications have also been intercepted. We have formally protested to the Canadian government as we deem these actions to be a flagrant violation of relevant diplomatic and consular conventions.
Moving on, the deadliest flash floods in Spain's modern history have left at least 200 people dead, with dozens still missing. This comes after 4 days of torrential rains which swept the eastern region of Valencia. Spain has mounted the biggest peacetime disaster recovery operation. The hardest hit regions of Spain, Valencia has reported over 200 casualties. Emergency workers are racing against time to rescue those who are trapped in the debris. The Spanish government has deployed 10,000 troops and police to the flood-hit region. Volunteer squads from Moncada Civil Protection found a person still alive after 3 days of being trapped in a car in the Valencia area. The storm unleashed more rain on Shiva region in 8 hours than the town had experienced in 20 months. Floods knocked down 2 of the 4 bridges, making it unsafe to cross it. While the power has been restored, there is no drinking water for over 20,000 residents in Spain. In some areas, people have resorted to looting. According to reports, over 27 people have been arrested for robbing shops and offices in the Valencia region.
Está bien, es, mira, desesperación, impotencia, te encuentras con las manos atadas.
Local residents are expressing outrage over what they perceive as not enough support from the local authorities. As police and emergency workers continue the search for bodies, survivors are relying on the goodwill of the volunteers who have pushed in to fill the void.
Por parte de las autoridades, nadie, ¿tú sabes lo que es nadie? Se ha presentado aquí si necesitamos algo. Que vengan, que tengan que venir de fuera andando porque no pueden venir para que me echen una mano a mí y están ayudando a otros vecinos.
Esto es indignación, ni ayudas, ni nada, ni efectivos, nada, nos han dejado solos. Nosotros nos hemos limpiado nuestros barros, nos hemos buscado la vida para comer, si hemos tenido que ir a coger conservas, si hemos tenido que buscar agua, si hemos tenido que buscar todo, nos han dejado solos y nos han devastado.
The natural disaster has sparked a wave of support across the country. The Spanish Air Force's aerobatics team performed a flypast yesterday, honouring those affected by the floods. During this display, 6 jets executed a return flight at an undisclosed location, releasing red and yellow jet streams that symbolized the Valencia flag. In Bolivia, a hostage situation has emerged, with supporters of former President Evo Morales detaining at least 200 soldiers. Well, this comes after reports suggested that alleged backers of Morales took around several soldiers hostage after storming a barrack in central Chapare province. The hostage situation comes nearly 3 weeks after supporters of Morales, the country's first indigenous leader, began blocking roads to prevent his arrest. Morales is denying what he calls trumped-up rape charges aimed at blocking his political comeback. 65-year-old Morales was in office from 2006 to 2019 when he resigned under a cloud after elections marked by fraud. Bolivia's armed forces say that irregular armed groups had kidnapped military personnel and seized weapons and ammunition in Chapare province. Morales told reporters in Chapare that he would go on a hunger strike until the government comes to the negotiating table. Later, however, he called on his supporters to consider temporarily suspending the roadblocks to avoid bloodshed in the country. Despite being barred from running again, Morales wants to challenge President Luis Arce, his former ally turned rival, for the nomination of the left-wing Mas Party in the country's August 2025 elections. Morales is accused of fathering a daughter with a girl. He says an early investigation was closed in 2020 for lack of evidence. Chapare is the place where Morales claimed he was the victim of an assassination attempt last week that he blamed on the state agents.
Que muchos intentan de
Attracting over 500 ski enthusiasts eager to hit the slopes, China has finally opened its first ski resort in the extreme north. The vibrant inaugural of the resort featured tourists dressed in colorful anime costumes, enhancing the lively atmosphere there. Take a look at these visuals as we call it a wrap. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. Do stay tuned.